So let's start talking about Thrasymachus's challenge to Socrates and to this normal idea of justice. And, as I said last lecture, justice is really for the Greeks this very key, very central, almost the main moral concept, right? And, so I don't think it's really distorting things too much if when we see Thrasymachus and Socrates talking about justice, we can almost just take this as talking about morality generally. And so when Thrasymachus says that we should be skeptical about justice, I think he pretty clearly means that we should be suspicious. We should actually reject moral claims generally, right? So he thinks that justice is bad, and if we were smart, we wouldn't think it was a good thing. We wouldn't try to be just. We would try to be as unjust as we could get away with being. And I don't think it's really going to distort Thrasymachus's meaning if we say, he thinks that we shouldn't try to be moral. In fact, we should be as immoral as we can get away with being. All right, so why in the world does he think this, right? Well, according to Thrasymachus, justice is really just a system of control. Whoever is in charge of a society, he talks about the strong, and Socrates presses him on this, who are the strong? What do you mean by this? And what he means by this is basically just whoever is in charge in society. And so the strong, or whoever is in charge of society, determines what justice is. Or, I think it's not an exaggeration to say what morality is. And when they do this, they set up the system of justice so that it benefits them, and it benefits them at the expense of everyone else. It's this system of control for the benefit of who's in charge, but it's not good for everybody else because the people who are in charge only benefit at the expense of the other members of society. Well, okay. If this is true, and Thrasymachus thinks that there's two parts to this. The first part is, obviously, he thinks the people in charge are going to set up the laws to benefit themselves. If the rich run society, they'll set up the tax laws so that they pay less of a share than the poor or the workers do, right? If, say, the clergy, religious figures run society, they'll set up the laws so you have to pay respect to them, right? You have to give proper respect to whatever the priests of the religion are if they're running things. They might even set up things so you have to donate a certain amount of your income to their religion, right? Laws will be set up in that way. But there's a deeper part to this, and something that Thrasymachus thinks is more unsettling and that we should really be on the lookout for. And that is that the people in charge, the powerful or the strong, will set up the very system of moral rules to do the same, to benefit themselves at the expense of everyone else. When they do this, ordinary people will internalize these rules. Obviously, if the powerful make the laws, you need to follow the laws when you'd get caught, even if you don't like them. But Thrasymachus says, well, the really creepy thing is they get you to believe this stuff, so you follow the moral rules that harm you and benefit the people in charge, because most of us aren't in charge, right? You follow these rules even when you could break them, right? Well, he thinks that is the really unsettling thing here. And we'll talk in the next lecture a bit more what this looks like in practice. Thrasymachus gives a lot of examples there from ancient Greek times. I wasn't familiar with any of these people that he cites. I don't expect you to be either. Well, anyway, if Thrasymachus' account of justice is true, it does really set you up for skepticism about justice, and I think about morality more generally. Thrasymachus is right. It follows from that. You can conclude from that morality is relative. Morality different from society to society. Well, why is that? Because different groups are in charge in different societies, right? In Iran, the clergy, they're in charge, the religious figures. Iran is going to have a different moral code, where you have to respect these religious figures and their sources of power than will North Korea, where the Communist Party is in charge. And you have to respect the dear leader, right? America will have yet a different moral code because, in America, we the people are in charge. Well, maybe, right? I don't know. You guys might be smirking at that. I sometimes have my own doubts. But whoever's in charge in America, it's not the Communist Party of Korea. It's not Shia clergy, right? Different moral rules, different people in charge. And Thrasymachus will say, that's why societies are so different, and there's really no fact about who's wrong or right. Thrasymachus will say they're all wrong, right? But the extent there is any fact is just a fact about who's in charge and what rules they've set to benefit themselves. The deeper reason to be skeptical, if Thrasymachus is right, is that you're a sucker to follow morality, to follow this idea of justice, if Thrasymachus is right. You are letting the people in charge exploit you for their benefit. Not only is being moral not in your interest and it is in theirs, you're letting yourself be taken advantage of to the extent you fall for this idea that justice and morality are these grand, important things. You should see through it, and once you do, you will be as unjust, as immoral as you can get away with being. Things will be better for you, Thrasymachus says. You'll get more of what you want, but more than that, maybe even more importantly, you won't be a sucker. You won't let yourself get taken advantage of. You won't fall for this con job, which he says justice and morality are. Okay. So those are big, scary, interesting, fun claims, the kind of things that a newspaper would like to broadcast because they catch your attention. But let's ask, are they true? What kinds of arguments can Thrasymachus give for this? Well, a lot of his arguments turn on these ancient Greek figures in history that we have no idea about. Some people do, some people study this. So I think we're going to have to reconstruct Thrasymachus' argument, but we can do it with examples that are a little more familiar to you and me. So that's what I'm going to do in the next lecture.